British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has sacked his ambassador to the United States as more revelations about the social circle surrounding disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein become public. Epstein was a convicted sex offender and was also facing trial on child sex trafficking charges when he died in an apparent suicide in prison in 2019. Sir Keir had been under mounting political pressure over Peter Mandelson after US lawmakers on Monday released a book compiled years before for Epstein's 50th birthday. It contained photos and a handwritten note from Mr. Mandelson that described Epstein as his best pal. First, the British government defended their ambassador. Then it changed its mind after a new trove of emails was published by Bloomberg on Wednesday.
In light of additional information in emails written by Peter Mandelson, the Prime Minister has asked the Foreign Secretary to withdraw him as ambassador to the United States. The emails show, Mr. Speaker, that the depth and extent of Lord Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is materially different from that known at the time of his appointment. In particular, Mr. Speaker, Lord Mandelson's suggestion that Jeffrey Epstein's first conviction was wrongful and should be challenged is new information.
Well, unfortunately for the Prime Minister, he had stood up in Parliament and defended Peter Mandelson just hours before he decided to fire him.
Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in Peter Mandelson?
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying the victims of Epstein are the forefront of our minds. He was a despicable criminal who committed the most heinous crimes and destroyed the lives of so many women and girls. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
This is interesting, Mr. Speaker. He says the ambassador has expressed full regret, but the victims of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein have called for Lord Mandelson to be sacked. And just so the House is aware, in 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of child prostitution and sex trafficking that took place between 2002 and 2005. That is the precise period which Lord Mandelson called Jeffrey Epstein his best pal. Absolutely. Was the Prime Minister aware of this intimate relationship when he appointed Lord Mandelson to be our ambassador in Washington?
Mr. Speaker, as she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship.
Well, he was, but now he's not. So let's get more on this from Quentin, who's a former foreign editor of the Financial Times. Welcome back to DW. Expand for us on what we heard in that first clip. What happened between the Prime Minister backing Peter Mandelson on Tuesday and then sacking him today?
Well, for a start, I think it could scarcely have come at a more embarrassing moment for Sir Keir Starmer. After all, President Trump is due in Britain in a week's time on a state visit on which he was due to be accompanied by Peter Mandelson as the UK ambassador to Washington. So it's a train wreck that's been waiting to happen, and it's actually happened at the most difficult possible moment. So I think that Keir Starmer was desperate to try and hang on to it, and then realised that, in fact, it was just an untenable position as more and more of these startling emails came out, just really underlying what they, I think, knew already, that the relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein was very close.
How close? Do we know?
Well, certainly in the words of Peter Mandelson, they were best pals, and he talked of "we love you." He said in another email after Epstein had been actually found guilty and was in jail. So he was, I think, a very regular visitor. Peter Mandelson has always been somebody who's been very impressed by the glamour and glitz of very wealthy people. And I think that's exactly what Jeffrey Epstein meant to him.
And we will come to that. But he was vetted, wasn't he, by security services. In the Prime Minister's words, a full due process was undertaken. So the supposed new details of his relationship with Epstein came to light in this reporting from Bloomberg, which makes it look like Bloomberg have better sources than Britain's security services.
It certainly seems as if that due process was somewhat less than rigorous. I mean, it's really difficult to imagine quite what was going on, because it was a very controversial appointment from the beginning. Everybody knew that Peter Mandelson has already twice resigned from major government ministerial positions over over scandals of different sorts. And when suddenly his name came out of the woodwork as the man who was going to likely be going to Washington, everybody said, hang on, is this wise? Well, Keir Starmer clearly decided that it was a good appointment to make, that Peter Mandelson, who is an extraordinarily able man and had huge experience, particularly of trade relations, which were obviously going to be absolutely central to Washington. I think that that Keir Starmer and his innermost advisors all decided that they couldn't resist the temptation of sending Mandelson to Washington. Fatal mistake.
The scandals you mentioned there, 1998, when he was Trade and Industry Secretary, he had to resign over a loan from another millionaire friend. And 2001, he resigned as Northern Ireland Secretary after contacting the Home Office a couple of years before on behalf of a billionaire Indian-born businessman, Srichand Hinduja, who was seeking British citizenship. And the quote that always follows this Peter Mandelson around is that he was it intensely relaxed about the idea of people making lots and lots of money?
Indeed, it was a quote that he was known for in trying to describe what the new Labour government of Tony Blair was in favour of, which was that they were very much in favour of people getting rich. And he was always clearly very much attracted himself to the company and being in the company of and being entertained by very wealthy friends.
Now, this is a bad week, a bad couple of weeks for the Prime Minister. This comes just a couple of days after he had to sack his Deputy Prime Minister. Have these scandals weakened him?
Yes, I think they have, undoubtedly. It's a bad moment domestically, and it's a bad moment internationally for this to happen. Domestically, as you said, he's lost his Deputy Prime Minister. He has had a massive reshuffle of his government. He's changed a lot of people around in order to give a new look to the government. And just as he's talking about sort of a relaunch and trying to make his government look stable and sensible, and certainly having nothing to do with sleaze and corruption, this new scandal comes out of the woodwork in relation to Peter Mandelson. And that's why I think that the reason was that he changed his mind, apparently so dramatically, having begun by trying to defend Peter Mandelson and then very swiftly changed to decide that actually the relationship couldn't continue.
So we're expecting that state visit from Donald Trump to London and the UK next week. Peter Mandelson's reputation as someone with an excellent contacts book and just being a charming, persuasive man, that was presumably part of why he got the job, to bring Trump around.
Yes, absolutely. I think that, in fact, his record in these few months that he's been ambassador is widely regarded as having been rather good, that he has indeed managed to get really quite close to President Trump and to actually be able to get the British government into a better position with the US president, with all his unpredictability, than the rest of Europe, than the member states of the European Union, who are facing rather more drastic tariff measures from Trump, and indeed are clearly regarded by Trump with some suspicion, whereas the US president is clearly quite keen on his relationship with the United Kingdom, with the British Prime Minister, and indeed with King Charles, whose name was on the invitation which he's coming in answer to next week.
And so now we have two prominent British figures, Prince Andrew and Peter Mandelson, who have had to face consequences over their relationship with Mr. Epstein. Different story in the US, though, isn't it? What do you make of that?
Well, I think the British are really very touchy about sort of sleazy behavior, as you might call it, the sort of behavior that clearly was encouraged by Jeffrey Epstein in his entertaining, where he had young women who were indeed underage, certainly under British law, encouraging sexual relations with some of his guests and so on, as those victims have come out since and charged. So all of that, I think, is something that really is found rather offensive in Britain. Maybe it's more acceptable in the US, or maybe it's simply that the single person who is clearly also involved in some way yet to be made absolutely clear in the US is the president himself. And his power is clearly just to reject the accusations and deny everything.
So now the United Kingdom needs a safe pair of hands in Washington. Presumably a safe pair of hands, no scandal, gets on well with Donald Trump. Who's in the running?
Well, I think they're going to go back probably and go for a professional diplomat, but I'm not absolutely sure. I think that their fingers have been badly burnt, Keir Starmer's in particular, in making a political choice. But I suppose that if he does go for a diplomat, and there are obviously some very senior diplomats around with a lot of experience, it might be seen as an admission that he got it very wrong the first time. So it's difficult to know. Donald Trump is such an unpredictable person to deal with, and it really did look for a brief time as if Peter Mandelson had that sort of engagement, that sort of familiarity with Donald Trump's love of the rich life and the trappings of wealthiness, that it would work. Now, I think they've got to find maybe somebody who, I don't know if they exist or not, and names have not really been mentioned at all so far, but a diplomat who can also really get quite close to a US president who is a difficult man. Perhaps it's somebody who plays golf. I was hearing the other day of another former ambassador who had discovered that you could get much more time from Donald Trump if you talk to him about golf than if you talk to him about tariffs.
All right. Thanks for talking us through that, Quentin. Quentin Peel, former foreign editor of the Financial Times. Have a good day.
Thank you.